And we are live, ready to go. Welcome everybody that is watching live. If you're watching the recording, hope you enjoy this chat. Now, what we're going to be talking about today is what really is employee experience, and also in relation to Microsoft Viva. What is this this new, I'll call it a suite of products that Microsoft has recently announced. For those of you that don't know, my name is Daniel Anderson, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Kanwal Khipple, who is the founder and CEO of Two to Lead, and also a multiple Microsoft MVP. So welcome, Kanwal. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Daniel.
Now, mate, your area of expertise, I've been following you for quite some time, consuming your content and your presentations and sessions around different conferences and events around the globe. Now, user experience is something that is that you talk about and have a real passion for, and you've got an extensive experience around that area with SharePoint, Azure, 365, Yammer. And you've obviously implemented and designed and architected a lot of solutions for organizations using these platforms. Now, the first thing, I guess the first question I wanted to ask you, I know, and I get this, and I see this question quite a lot, is what really is employee experience? How would you describe that to people?
Oh, great! Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think it even how I got into this space is interesting, because I started off as a developer, architected it, and I think for me, what really counted is how users actually interact with the solutions that we build. So employee experience has been part of my heart and soul from the beginning. It's basically, how do we help humans, employees, throughout anything that they do? So that's, for me, what employee experience is just focusing on people, focusing on interactions over technology, over some of the complex processes that are in place.
Yeah, and do you think has it always been a focus for organizations, or is it only sort of recently that it's become at the center of attention? I find a lot of organizations or customers that we speak to at the moment are really driving with that as the initial talking point about improving and improving that area.
I think I've been pretty blessed as well in my career, because a lot of the conversations I had were with HR leads, communication leads, marketing leads, where the biggest focus was on the experience. So whether it's public-facing sites or internal intranets. So a lot of that happened for me naturally with those conversations, less about the technology. But I think in the last, 3 to 4 years, as it's been more cloud adoption, it's been a little bit more about the technology, right? People have been a little bit more interested on, I heard about SharePoint, I heard about Teams, and can we use that? So the conversation in some ways has shifted over to technology and the features themselves. But I think in the last 12 months, Daniel, with the pandemic and all the other challenges that we're running into for business transformation, kind of really brought people at the center. Like, hey, we don't care about the technology, we don't care about the features, we just need people to do this. So I think the conversation is kind of circling back now with a bigger focus on not just UX, but EXP, employee experience, human experience.
Yeah, and Microsoft have obviously recognized that as a really big and important area of people's work. Now, recently, everybody will have seen the announcement and the marketing videos and all of that type of thing around Microsoft Viva, and there's been a lot of commentary, a lot of things said, a lot of marketing material being circulated around that particular suite of products, and I've heard this heard this. I've heard it defined in a number of different ways. So, how would you define Microsoft Viva?
How would I define Microsoft Viva? It's essentially a platform, and I think right now what we're seeing early bits is a platform with a number of different apps that are connecting experiences together. But I think we're just seeing the early start of that overall strategy and the overall approach with what Microsoft's clearly seeing a gap in, that we're all kind of collectively seeing a gap in. Whether we're on the business side or the technology side, is that we need something centralized. We need something that kind of brings these pieces together to make our day-to-day a little bit less eventful, a little bit more productive.
Yeah, and have you had a chance to have a look at any modules that have been released so far? I mean, and what were your initial thoughts? And you've probably had some time to, I guess, consume a lot of the material. What are your first thoughts on the entire thing?
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky to kind of not just see where things are going in terms of Microsoft investments. We've been fortunate to be part of a few private previews as well with customers. I think probably the biggest thing is that there's a huge kind of I would say comfort in knowing that Microsoft started to work in this space, but it's still early. I think we got 4 modules, right? Connections. We've had an opportunity there to work with that recently as well. A lot of excitement around connections and what that's going to kind of entail and what the possibilities are. But I think the one that excites me most outside of connections is probably Viva Learning. Viva Learning is probably the biggest area that I'm excited about. I know we've been working with customers for the past year or so where we've been building similar type of applications, the ability for users to kind of skill up. Because that was a big challenge for a lot of companies in the last year, where they needed kind of a break from the day-to-day, but also an opportunity to say that they're not going from meeting to meeting without improving their own ability to learn and grow. So learning became such a big focus for a lot of companies. So we're pretty excited about Viva Learning, I think, in terms of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, right. And I think a big area for me that I've looked at so far is topics. There's obviously a lot of information inside of whether it's people's heads or companies, people floating around inside of an organization, and being able to surface that in a more easy way, I think is going to be really powerful for a lot of organizations. Have you had much to do with either sort of Project Cortex or topics in its early syntax and in its topics in its infancy at the moment?
Yeah, I think for the past 3 to 6 months, we've been working with a couple orgs on that as well. Small little pilots to kind of help them adopt and understand. I mean, Viva Topics is, whether you're in SharePoint, whether you're in Teams, you're able to define some keywords, key topics that people want to be able to reference and be able to go to the key experts and resources. That's like need, I think every organization is going to have. So it's an easy one for customers to just get it and people to say, yeah, we want that. Obviously, the challenge is, okay, now you need to invest. There's an AI part of it, which is kind of discovers the topics for you. But now you also need somebody to invest, a knowledge manager to invest time to curate that, to kind of formulate that, to kind of bring that together. So
that's a kind of I see that as an important role moving forward. Definitely. I've heard it people say before around SharePoint search, right? So just put everything in SharePoint and search you'll be able to find it because you'll be able to search. But obviously with and I've heard a couple of similar things around topics where, AI will do it. It'll pick up topics. It'll do everything for us. But there's still going to be a need for somebody to curate all of that content, and that role in an organization is going to become really important, I think.
100%. Yeah, I think SharePoint or the cloud, OneDrive, whatever have you, has become that store for information, for data. But now to make that data turning into knowledge, you need somebody to manage that knowledge and kind of connect the dots. So I know Microsoft's done a fantastic job. Know a lot of the product team members there as well. We've kind of helped connect the dots, building that infrastructure to make sure these connections are there and you're able to surface better results from those. But you still need somebody there to manage that. The AI is not going to be able to know who your experts are. It's going to be able to provide recommendations and suggestions. But yeah, that's still something that's somebody internally needs to manage a little bit more.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've had a little bit to do with connections. Where do you see that playing a role in this whole employee experience? I mean, do you think the drive is to push, well, not push everybody into Teams, but Teams is obviously the usage, as we know, has skyrocketed. So bringing that I'll call it intranet experience into Teams, is that the direction you see connections going?
Yeah, I think it's a really good topic to kind of explore. So it's really important if you look at Microsoft's messaging and kind of where they're going as well. This is not Microsoft Viva on Teams, right? This is Microsoft Viva as a platform. So I think today, and for a long time, we know like Teams has really hit a really good sweet spot in terms of how we all work day to day. So Teams definitely becomes a natural launch point for a lot of the Viva platform modules and apps that they're building out. We can only assume there'll be more apps that are coming out, but will Teams be the only place that you want to be able to explore and connect and be able to consume connections and be able to consume your learning modules, right? That's not going to be the only place. So it'd be in Microsoft's best interest, and I'm sure they've got a lot of data on how we use and how we leverage all the different tools. So they are going to go where the community is and where everybody is. But I think Teams is just a launch point. I think Teams is just that starting point, and then continue expanding on it.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned before you think that Viva is a platform. So how do you think there's going to be, I guess, the ability, being a platform? I mean, I look at SharePoint as being a platform as well. Now, Viva, I mean, I tend to look at it as more of the services that have been announced, or the modules that have been announced with Viva, are already pre-existing services, pretty much, right? Inside of 360. Oh, but in some sort of way. But is Viva really a platform, or would we look at Office 365 or Microsoft 365 as the actual platform itself?
Yeah, I think, at least from everything that I'm seeing and I'm understanding, I think we got to take a step back, right? Last 12 months, it's been crazy. Besides the pandemic, we've had a lot of challenges, a lot of diversity inclusion challenges that we've run into, political instability, climate change, all this stuff that's been happening. At the end of the day, I think people just want a simplified way to improve their health, be able to skill up, be able to learn, connect with their peers, and just be able to surface up knowledge, right? So I feel like Microsoft's done a fantastic job with creating a brand, creating a platform for that. It's early to say that, right now what they've done is they've, to your point, kind of brought in different pieces together, rebranded them. They've done a fantastic job. I love the Viva name, but I also think it's bigger than just going to be bigger than just Microsoft 365. But I think it's really early right now to say anything more. Yeah,
it's funny. I mean, there's we're still in the dark a little bit, I guess, with a lot of those modules and how they're going to be released and licensed and priced and all that sort of stuff. I'm sure there'll be more on that next week, maybe at Ignite. It's a fairly good timing to announce, and then potentially next week. You laugh because you probably know some inside stuff that you can't really share with us anyway, but we won't dive into that. Now, for yourself, I guess for your company and you particularly, how do you think this Viva, I'll call it a platform because you called it a platform. How do you think it's going to? Do you think it's going to change the way that your company works and interacts with each other as well?
Well, I think for me personally, I've always been about employee experience, user experience. So this for me is a resounding kind of beating the chest. Microsoft saying we recognize that technology is not at the center of employees. So I love that kind of bold statement from Microsoft. Nadell and the team, they're doing a fantastic job just highlighting that. Now it comes to lead and what we're about. It's always been about helping people adopt. I feel like it's perfect for us in terms of what we've been helping customers with, from intranets to automation to helping them move to the cloud. We're just continuing on this journey for a lot of customers. And as we learn, we're hoping we'll be able to guide customers in the right direction as well. When it makes sense to invest into Viva, will Viva and all its modules be all under licenses, add-ons, or a separate license? Will some of them maybe be kind of a freemium model? We got to figure that out. We got to learn a little bit more. But I think everyone's going to be able to benefit, hopefully, from it. I think it'd be Microsoft's best interest to make everyone benefit from it.
Yeah. Given that, I guess these services or modules have been already in existence in Microsoft 365 in some way, with your work with the clients and customers that you work with, has individually as individual modules, have you used those services previously? And do you think that now that it's all these applications have come in under the one Viva brand, they're going to be used and adopted more as opposed to being separate applications?
Yeah, I think Viva Learn was a bit of a surprise for sure. It was a huge need for it. So I think Microsoft's doing a fantastic job there. So in terms of topics, I've had a lot of familiarity with that. Continued improvements that are coming from the content services team. We're a content services partner because we believe in that. Knowledge management kind of services. I think ultimately having a consistent brand like that umbrella will help with adoption and help raise awareness for example, one of the things we haven't really talked about is like Viva Insights, right? A lot of companies, when they implement technology, turn on Teams, turn on features, create a few forms through Power Apps, they don't realize that the amount of change that they're bringing in, what it has done in terms of mental health or potentially mental stress, right? There's definitely productivity gains, but that change, the amount of change you bring into your work, wouldn't be great to have insight into that. So Viva Insights is another, I think, really going to be an eye opener for a lot of companies to be able to see that insight.
And there is the manager view of insights of or workplace analytics or that side of it as well, which I think is going to bring a lot of value and a lot of potentially interesting data to leaders and managers of groups of people. So it'll be interesting to see how organizations adopt that and use that and potentially change some different areas of their organization as well. I guess it's come out through the marketing. Do you think Viva is targeted at HR people or HR departments of organizations? Is it more than, should it be targeted at more people than just HR?
I think it definitely is targeted at those that are interested in helping people improve and have a better experience. And a lot of organizations, that has been HR, or fundamentally that's been the role, right? To help the human resources, the human capital that you have, increase its productivity, increase its kind of output. So we've seen, companies in the space like Workday, I think SAP a little bit in terms of some of the stuff that they've done. Others that have kind of touched upon that space a little bit, that they're starting to make some inroads. So I think this is Microsoft saying, hey, we're we have all the technology and the capital in place to help improve human capital as well.
Yeah. Now, this is something that interests me. Now, how do you think this will impact, I guess, ISVs and partners and developers and things like that? I mean, it is, as we know, with Microsoft, we've seen it before with SharePoint Modern and things like that. Is there going to be, do you think, the ability to extend and integrate and that side of it? I mean, for you as a Microsoft partner, you're really focused on and something that interests you is the learning aspect. So are you looking at ways where you can I guess integrate into learning as well with the work that you do?
Yeah, I think learning, in terms of the feature sets, at least that we've seen that are publicly available today, bring the right amount of experiences. I think the challenge with Viva Learning is going to be market fit. There's companies that are already investing into learning, that already have learning management solutions. Where does Viva Learning fit into them for them? So I think that's still kind of a question mark in terms of market interest. For those that don't have a learning or LMS system, Viva Learning feels like just the right fit. Like, why not trial it out? Why not test it out? They've done a fantastic job with the UX and the experience from it that's been coming together. I think the ones that are most exciting are probably Viva Connections, which kind of feels like, not necessarily the new internet, so to speak, but becomes a new starting point for a lot of organizations. So I think that one's probably the most interesting, Viva Connections. But I'd imagine for all these 4 modules that we have today and further, Microsoft's always been a partner company. So I'd imagine there's going to be opportunities for partners to either leverage APIs, build extensions on top of them, and continue extending that further and further.
Now, James has just jumped in with a question. Now, I'm going to hand this over to you, Kanwal. Now, you've implemented many intranets and communication platforms and systems. And I'll be interested to hear your response to this question as well. So James has asked, what impact do both see? I'm going to ask you first. Viva having on vendor-developed SharePoint intranet solutions, which is where Connections is kind of moving towards, right?
I'd love to ask you that question, but I'll answer first.
Good.
And hey, James, thanks so much for the comment. I think first I'll start with, let's say, TutorLead as an example. We have done a lot of intranets and built a lot of custom ones, but also partnered with a lot of internet companies. And for us, Viva is a complementary story, and a story where you can extend and further extend the possibilities. What a lot of internet vendors have done in the past is extend SharePoint capabilities from out of the box, right? Build modules, extensions, components above and beyond what Microsoft and SharePoint provide. So I see Connections as a complement to the digital workplace, a way to extend that. Are there going to be organizations that might not want all 3, SharePoint out of the box, internet product, as well as Viva Connections? Or are there going to be some organizations just want SharePoint out of the box and Viva Connections? So everyone's kind of journey is going to be different. I'm hoping, because I love the UX for it, I love the story behind Viva Connections. I'm hoping that a lot of organizations that are looking at this look at the product vendors out there and see how Viva Connections supports that and continues extending the experience, because the experience is not just a single page that you go to. It's different interactions, different touch points. So I'm hoping for the internet companies that are out there, the vendors that are out there, embrace it. And it's just like when you work in the cloud, you got to continue iterating, got to pivot a little bit and make sure you're continuing to improve the employee experiences, not just with your products, but complementary products as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with pretty much everything you said. In terms of, I mean, what, for example, internet providers, well, I know at Varlo, we're really excited about how the potential is to work with connections and see how we can either leverage connections or integrate in with connections, but really embrace that type of experience. And you mentioned there the different touch points. So, we're not just SharePoint. Your intranet's not just SharePoint. It's a bigger thing than that now. And having those additional touch points inside of Teams with the same content, being able to provide that better experience, I think is something that's really, really positive. With intranet out of the box providers, then you're always in a competitive landscape against Microsoft, right? So, and a lot of the out of the box functionality that comes from Microsoft is extremely good, but there are always going to be gaps or ways that you can improve on that experience. And I think connections is going to follow. I mean, as I mentioned before, we did see it with SharePoint Modern. Everybody thought that would potentially mean that intranet providers would fall by the wayside, but we've obviously seen that not
there's been a growth. There's been a growth. I think for sure with a huge announcement at the level where Satya Nadella is kind of presenting and showcasing Viva. All the details are a little bit missing right now. So I'm sure with Microsoft Ignite next week, you guys get a little bit further clarity on how connections fits into your existing intranet and how it extends it and how it actually improves that experience. But the best thing you can do if you're an intranet vendor or if you're somebody in the technology space is continue to work very closely with customers, with employees, users of the products. And you're going to hear very clearly as they use the products, what works and what doesn't. What I love about Microsoft and why I've invested my career here with Microsoft Technologies is that they have been able to iterate quicker than a lot of other larger organizations. So I think, if anything, I think they're only going to help elevate that employee experience and help elevate a lot of the product vendors to continue innovating. And that's what we're seeing, right? Whether it's Valo and other companies, they've got amazing talent, passionate people with amazing skills and super smart who are going to be able to look at what is coming out, how does it adjust, and continue building great experiences. So a lot of times what you're not building or buying into is a product, you're buying into the team and the passion. So when you're picking a vendor, always goes down to make sure they follow best practices, they understand the Microsoft roadmap, and you trust them. And as long as you get that trust.
Yeah. And I think it's going to drive a lot of innovation in these companies as well. It'll be really interesting to see what experiences that Viva, well, Connections specifically, what other types of innovation that I guess provides other vendors to then produce as well. So
I think that's the one I'm most excited about. I think that's the one I'm most excited about, Viva Connections, just the ability for people to connect. What are some of those things that you want as an employee when you're wanting to connect it within your workforce, right? What is that going to be? I think
I was reading an article. I think it was Sue Hanley that wrote an article recently that mentioned about a lot of intranets seem to fail a lot because they're really focused just on the communication aspect when there's services and tasks and that type of thing that people need to get their work done. I think Connections will help drive that. I mean, it's not all about communication. It is a lot about other services and aspects as well.
Yeah, it's about not just communicating, right? Not just about news. It's about being productive, being able to get work done, but also able to take a pause. So I see Connections as, one of the biggest challenges, I think, from a UX perspective, experience perspective, that Microsoft's going to need to manage on Connections is how to prioritize certain elements, certain feeds that come up versus others. So that's the one I think for me, Daniel, I continue to iterate, just piques my interest so much.
But do we need another feed? We've got the activity feed in Teams. Do we have a now feed in connections?
We have an activity feed in Yammer. We have comments feed. We have lots of feeds. So I'm sure Microsoft's listening. If you're not, we need one feed that kind of unites them all. That would be fantastic. And if connections is a driver for you, awesome, all for it. But 100%, I think that consolidation is required. That's the only way to make an employee experience that much more, valuable for employees.
See, there's some innovation. Let's create a universal activity feed. Now, as Microsoft continues to invest and look at Teams as the center of, shall I say, digital workplace. How far is this going to go? How far do you think Teams can go as the center of the digital workplace?
Yeah, I think that's a tricky one. Teams definitely right now is, and I think will continue to be, central hub for a lot of people in terms of being productive. Now the question is, when you look at both management of tools as well as management of people, is this the only place that people are going to go to manage their employees, right? For sure, if you're working with Dynamics 365, let's say the HR components of it, the modules, there is an HR app today. There's a timesheet app. There's a bunch of different Dynamics 365 apps today that are Teams enabled, but not everyone is fully 100% Microsoft. So having that Viva experience not just be central to Teams, I feel is going to be probably an area where Microsoft needs to invest into, where it's not just about Teams, right? Because I think a good portion, I don't know the numbers, I'm sure, Microsoft Teams adoption has surged like crazy, but even if there's like 80% adoption rate there for Fortune 500 companies, how about that 20%, right? Where are they usually doing that work? You want to be there as well. So Teams will continue to be that place for a lot of companies, but Viva is meant to be a platform not just accessible through Teams, but hopefully other experiences as well.
Yeah, no, that's some really good insights. But with a couple of final questions for you, in terms of to lead and your customers and your clients over this whole period of COVID, how have you found not only your company but the clients that you work with adapt, and what have been the biggest challenges that you've seen companies have to face throughout this time?
I think the same challenges that we're facing today, which is, as technologists, we're so close to the technology. We're aware of all, usually not all, but most of the announcements, but how they all connect, it's getting more and more complex. So as a technologist, that's tricky, right? You have to be mindful of all the announcements, make sure you're leading customers in the right direction. There's a big trust-based relationship there. And that trust-based relationship is there with your employees as well. Everybody has 40 hours of work per week. They've got their clear goals. Oh, by the way, we're going to make some technology changes for you, and we're going to make them every week, every quarter. Some are going to be enabled automatically by Microsoft. Others are going to be disabled. So that trust aspect is going to, with the pandemic, has caused a lot more stress. So I think that's one that needs to continue to be managed, right? Is to be successful, you got to make sure that trust is there for that continued change, because the less stress you cause an employee and improving their productivity and helping their wellness is just going to go a longer way for them feeling great about what they do and the tools that they use. Yeah.
James has jumped in with another question. Now, Microsoft surely doesn't have black box algorithms, do they?
Don't they?
So, what do you think? Should we be a little bit nervous, a little bit excited about Microsoft actually telling people what they should see and do in terms of the information that's presented to them?
I think so, and I think they're trying to. I think Microsoft is a partner, a vendor, a company that I trust. They have good intentions. Obviously, limited resources despite their massive growth. Um, I think they're trying. I think workplace analytics, my analytics are a step in that direction for sharing the data that they have and sharing insights on how it can improve your usage and your mental health. But yeah, right now it's a black box. I would love for them to share it. The key here is going to be how do you share that data? Which data do you share? Who do you share that data with? So there's compliance, regulatory kind of questions that come up there. Yeah.
Do you actually do you either internally or do your clients actually use the My Analytics service?
Not a lot of our clients. My Analytics, I believe, is free, and then Workplace Analytics is an add-on. I think our goal with every engagement is to try to encourage and highlight My Analytics for customers, for those managers, try to educate them on it, make sure they understand how to evaluate that data, so that everybody in the organization is aware how to use My Analytics. But because of that add-on, it's tricky right now. I think a lot, especially in the last year, it's been a little bit harder for customers to invest more into things that they don't know if they need it or not. Trying to incorporate as much as we can.
And I think that's the other point of the other part of Viva. I think that's going to be. I mean, we're still a little bit unsure of, but I mean, topics, for example, might be out of reach while it provides a ton of value. At the price point at the moment, $5 per user per month is probably going to be out of reach for a lot. So it'll be interesting to see where the other modules are, how they're licensed, and what the price point is going to be for that as well. Even around learning, how's that going to work with LinkedIn Learning and those paid services as well?
I feel like Viva Learning so far, everything that we've seen publicly is Viva Learning on its own, once available, should hopefully, knock on wood, be relatively cheap or free. You'd hope. And now the question is, okay, if you want to connect into LinkedIn Learning, you want to connect into other sources like Pluralsight, you obviously need both a subscription there, and you also need to be able to kind of bring in that information. So, there's some complex architecture in the background to make that happen. That will be, to your point, I think licensing is going to be a big reason why people are going to really kind of take a step back and say, okay, what are we investing into? And is this the right time for us to invest into that? So I'm really hoping, Daniel, that next week at Ignite, maybe next week, is when we hear a little bit maybe about a freemium plus kind of scenario, right? Here are some pieces that might be free or included already in your E3 or existing licenses, but all the goodness that you wanted, the additional pieces are add-ons.
Is that insider knowledge, or is that just you hoping?
I'm hoping,
right?
Because I think even for us as a partner, I don't think we get partner free licenses for that. So I would love to deploy Viva internally and have our team kind of be able to use it. So and I think that's a lot of us, right? Customers as well. Even if there's a way to do a trial period where you get to use it for 6 months and say, do you really want this or not? There has to be. I really hope for Viva, for an employee experience to be adopted, you need that kind of that interest for when people see the value and want to continue adopting it. So I think just like with everything else, we've seen with Power Platform licenses where they've changed and pivoted to others. As they announce a new product, they're going to figure that out and kind of iterate through it. So if next week I don't hear anything around that piece, I'm definitely going to submit like a user voice request to them to say, hey, we got to have a freemium model because that's going to really help drive adoption.
So. Yeah, definitely. All right, let's leave it there. Kanwal, it's been really good to chat to you about everything employee experience and Viva. As I said, I've been reading and watching your content, and you're very knowledgeable and passionate about this user experience aspect and side of technology and organizations. Thank you to everybody that watched live. Thanks, James, for your questions. I know this is a massive area for you. So any final words, Kanwal, before we end the show?
I'm pumped. I'm excited. I think we're all part of this community together. Let's share a little bit more collectively, whether it's on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Clubhouse.
Clubhouse. You're a Clubhouse. You're a Clubhouse man.
Totally, I'm on Clubhouse. But I think being able to help people just be able to be happier in their day to day. That's ultimately, I think, at the end of the day, our goal. So we're in this together. Daniel, this was amazing. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Love the work that you guys are doing. Excited for our hopefully we get the chance to connect next week.
We will indeed. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.